COVID-19 pandemic, and that Hackensack Meridian Health is here for all your emergency needs. So if you're experiencing heart attack symptoms, such as chest pain and upper body discomfort, shortness of breath, cold sweats, nausea, or lightheadedness, or stroke symptoms, such as balance issues, vision problems, face drooping, arm or leg weakness, or speech difficulty, please call 911 immediately. Our emergency department team is taking special precautions with all patients and created designated areas for the treatment of COVID-19 patients. To learn more about how Hackensack Meridian Health is providing you the best healthcare during this pandemic, visit hackensackmeridianhealth.org/getcarenow. Sponsored by Hackensack University Medical Center Foundation and aired by the New Jersey Broadcasters Association and this station.
Morris County needs our Spanish-speaking community to fill out the 2020 census. It's safe, it's easy, and it's really important. If we are not fully counted, communities in Morris County from all nationalities, races, and ethnic groups will lose federal aid. Less money for housing and child care programs, less for schools and student lunches, less for senior citizens, less for community health care. Competition for federal dollars is fierce. So if you live in Morris County, please fill out your census online or on paper. No one will ask about citizenship, social security, bank accounts, or personal info. Help Morris County count in 2020. Do it now. Visit NJ Census 2020. This message sponsored by the County of Morris, the New Jersey Department of State Complete Count Commission, and aired in cooperation with the New Jersey Broadcasters Association and this station.
You're listening to WBWD 540 AM, Islip, New York, a part of Universal Stations, LLC.
The views, opinions, and statements expressed in the following program reflect the views of program contributors and do not necessarily reflect the views of WBWD Radio, its management, or its sponsors. For questions and comments, please send us an email at contact@bali540am.com or visit us at bali540am.com.
Sports Talk New York with your hosts, Mark Rosenman and AJ Carter. Sports Talk New York is sponsored in part by Prince Associates for all your insurance needs, the Phoenix Tube Company, the law firm of Declator Cohen and DePrisco, Solomon Jewelers, and General Needs Charity, serving our homeless veterans with dignity. And now, here are your hosts, Mark and AJ.
And good Sunday evening to you. No, it's not Mark and AJ. It's Mark, Ryan, and Mike. Peace with you this Sunday evening. Actually, this is our last show before we go on our fall hiatus. When we come back, we will be totally rebranded, and you can follow us on our Facebook page and Twitter page to find out more information about that rebranding and exciting, great stuff coming up towards the end of the year. So we're doing a little special tonight, so keep it tuned right here. And if you're watching us on the Facebook Live, make sure you throw in some comments there. We always like to interact with you during the show. It's time for the KAPCO Major League Baseball report, and with baseball underway, it means the warm weather is here, and it's a great time to keep those windows and doors open. Let the fresh air in, keep the bugs out with a Clearview retractable screen. The Clearview retractable screen system comes standard with a lifetime warranty and patented speed reducer so it will not snap back. You get the luxury of a screen door and a sleek low-profile design without the hassle of a bulky storm door or sliding screen door. Call 631-440-1100 for free estimates and purchase a unit to get yours with free installation when you mention Sports Talk New York. That's 631-440-1100 or visit clearviewlongisland.com. All right. I did put the warning out there on Facebook and on Twitter, and I said that the opening was not going to be pretty. John, you know what? I'm just done. I'm done. Last year we talked about it. I didn't want Mickey Callaway to get fired. I thought the way the players played for him, I thought the energy around the team was good. I thought that he would grow into the position of manager. I felt, yes, he made some in-game decisions that had you scratching your head, but I think the players played for him. I wanted Joe Girardi when they fired Mickey, and that was one of the choices out there. My fallback was Luis Rojas. So I'm second guessing myself now. He's out of his depth. He's out of his league. As far as the pitching coach as well, Hefner is not any good either. I used to defend Diaz. He's terrible. He can't. It's not even a matter of the fans getting on him. He's giving up home runs in empty buildings. But let's go step by step with what systematically is wrong with the New York Mets. All right, you have at the beginning of the week the choices that you could make after that 3-game series against the Yankees was postponed. You have the opportunity to use the best pitcher in baseball 2 times in 7-inning games, yet you push him back because it wasn't his throw day, and then you set it up so he ends up pitching against the same team 4 starts in a row, which I don't think bodes well for tomorrow on top of it. Then you have what the Mets finally did something right. The players among themselves decided in protest to walk off the field. The way they did it was perfect. But then, because of that, you have Brody, on a hot mic. He's done stuff before in front of people, throwing chairs. Now he's on a hot mic, throwing the commissioner under the bus. But then you get 10 minutes later or 15 minutes later, him having to apologize because Brody Van Wagenen doesn't know the difference between his owner on a phone conversation and the commissioner of baseball. I find that hard to believe. Then 2 hours later, you have the Mets Public Relations Department sending out 2 separate statements from Jeff and Fred Wilpon where they spell the name of their general manager incorrectly twice. You just can't make this up. And then you get to today's game. Okay, you're winning 7-2, but within that game, you have a number of mental mistakes. You have Pete Alonso totally sleeping on the base paths on a wild pitch at third base where your grandmother could have scored on that. Just not paying attention whatsoever. You have Dominic Smith. Granted, he's not an outfielder. He turned around wrong twice on a ball, but that's fine. It would have been a double anyway because it was off the wall. But then you have no one covering second base on the next hit where a throw has to come in. Then you have a 5-run lead. You have 2 fresh pitchers that are just been added to the roster. Okay, so you have Kilome and you have Drew Smith. If you have 2 pitchers that can't get 3 outs protecting a 5-run lead, they don't deserve to be on the roster. But instead, you go to a guy who hasn't pitched 3 days in a row since about 3 years ago. John, talk me off the ledge. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me this is just an aberration, and this is not what the Mets really are.
I don't know. I will say it's an aberration. I don't know if it's not what the Mets really are because they have made a lot of mental mistakes in the past week, and that's and listen, they're coming off a break because of the COVID case. It's been a weird year, but I do think it's up to the manager to have his team ready to play, and his team does not seem ready to play, and I think that's the biggest problem. I think the DeGrom thing was a head scratcher for sure. Why you wouldn't lead off and get DeGrom as many starts as possible in the season is beyond me. Why you wouldn't schedule his throw day? Why you wouldn't have him throw the day before so he can do that? That's beyond me. And the Brody thing is a whole separate conversation. I will say, however, that I really didn't have a problem with bringing Hughes in a 3rd day in a row. It's not like the Mets have so much to work with in that back end. And yes, Chad Smith is fresh and Kilome is fresh, but Kilome also struggled when he had when he came in a big lead. And the thing about Jared Hughes, I mean, you could say that Jared Hughes was in for 3rd day in a row, but Jared Hughes got 4 outs in that inning. No, agreed. One of them was thrown away by Jimenez. He should have been in the clubhouse.
And a tag at third base by Jimenez as well.
Swing little doozy that also should have, where there was no second baseman, and also should have ended the game because Jimenez dropped the throw from Conforto. So I can't get on Hughes. Yeah, he did have a hit by pitch and a walk, but he got 4 outs that inning.
No, understood.
I can't fault him.
But John, I understand that. But you have a 5-run lead. All right, so now you have a safety net for Drew Smith, and you have a safety net for Kilome. That's the game you bring in. If you're going to use Hughes for a 3rd day, why not in a higher leverage position when you're going to win a game? You have a 5-run lead. I'm sorry, if Drew Smith cannot hold a 5-run lead, he shouldn't be. What's the point of having him in the bullpen? What was the point of having Drew Smith in the bullpen?
Right. Well, there are a lot of other games that Drew Smith could have been involved in, and I get it. He probably could have been in the start the inning also, but it's not. It isn't as if Hughes was that terrible. It's not like they were hitting rockets off of Hughes. So, and I can't. If he wanted to go to the veteran one more time in that situation against the Yankees in the 9th inning, then I don't have a problem with that. If Drew Smith comes in and has the same type of inning, then it's the same thing. Why do you bring in Drew Smith in that situation when he's rusty. Because you can always frame the conversation.
I agree.
One of two ways. It's either Hughes who's been used too much or Smith who hasn't been used enough. I mean, it would have been, listen, the bottom line is, Jared Hughes is in the clubhouse if Andres Jimenez doesn't throw away that ball.
Agreed. All right, last question. New ownership. Hopefully the deal goes through. What are the odds that both Brody Van Wagenen and Rojas are in their current positions come opening day next year?
I'd say the odds are worse for Brody than they are for Rojas. I think Rojas has a lot of respect in that clubhouse, and I think it's going to buy him another year. I think it's unfair to judge him on an aberrated season like this. Brody, however, was a Jeffy hire. He was a Wilpon hire. I think he's gone. I think when the new ownership comes in, I think Brody's gone. Rojas might be gone too, but I think he has a better chance to stay.
All right, John Coppinger heard here each and every week over 540 AM Sports Talk New York. All right, so we mentioned that this is going to be our last show before we go to hiatus. We're going back to the vault, and this was a feature we did when we first started this show, and it was basically what if sports was this simulation program where you could go on their website and you can match up any teams, and we would ask our viewers and listeners to send in matchups they'd like to see, and then we would recreate them similar to what the guys are doing now off of not being at the stadium. And Will Chambers was our voiceover guy for these particular look-ins, and we would look in every so often in-game look-in. So this is how it sounded back when we used to do this feature.
1-0 our score here in the top of the third inning in New York between the 69 and 1986 New York Mets, as we welcome those of you listening to the What If Sports Game of the Week on WLIE 540 AM Sports Talk New York. Will Chambers here inside the broadcast booth at Shea Stadium. First baseman Keith Hernandez is standing at the dish for the 86 Mets with 2 out and runners on the corners. Dwight Gooden and his satin coat standing on third base as Wally Backman, who just reached on a fielder's choice, leads off at first. Hernandez 0 for 1 today. He is 1 of 5 groundouts for Seaver here in the first 3 innings. Seaver looks in, accepts the sign from Grody, and now set. And a delivery. Hernandez lines it to the gap and right and head towards the wall. Gooden will come in easily. Backman racing all the way from first, rounds third. The relay from Boswell, not in time. A 2-out double from Keith Hernandez brings in 2 and will give the 86 Mets a 2-1 lead.
So basically, we would drop those in like every 5 or 6 minutes. We'd do these live look-ins, and then at the end of the show, we'd go back to the stadium for a recap, and this is how it sounded when we used to do this feature.
A hot and hazy night here in the tri-state area set the scene for another great one on the What If Sports Game of the Week, as the 1969 Mets, who trailed only once back in the third inning, beat the 1986 New York Mets 8-7 on a walk-off base hit by Bud Harrelson with 1 out in the bottom of the 10th. His second RBI of the night, scoring Don Cardwell and finishing off the world champs. Getting the win for the 69 Mets is Tug McGraw, who struck out the only hitter he faced, and taking the loss for the 86 Mets is Randy Neiman. Came in to pitch the 10th and gave up the final run. Once again, our final score, 69 Mets 8, 86 New York Mets 7. For everybody here on the What If Sports Network on 540 AM WLIE Sports Talk New York, this is Will Chambers. Have a great week, everybody.
All right, we'll have a quick commercial on the side of the commercial. We're bringing back from the vault one of our first interviews done here at the station, so keep it tuned right here.
Decolator Cohen & DePrisco, LLP, is pleased to introduce their website, policeofficersrighttosue.com, as an educational and informative site designed to instruct members of the law enforcement community of their civil rights in line-of-duty accidents. Many law enforcement members are not aware of their rights to sue and fail to bring lawsuits within a specific time frame, thereby forfeiting their ability to seek rightful compensation against those parties that cause officers to be injured. PoliceofficersRightToSue.com provides successful for past results of line-of-duty lawsuits. These examples range from officers being provided with inadequate equipment, LMP accidents, slip and falls, and station house mishaps. If any law enforcement member has a question regarding a potential lawsuit, they can contact DCD at policeofficersrighttosue.com or at 1-800-901-1LAW. That's policeofficersrighttosue.com or 1-800-901-1LAW.
And welcome back to 540 AM Sports Talk New York. Mark Roseman, Ryan Sherman, Mike Capice with you this Sunday evening. As I mentioned at the top of the show, this is our last show before we go on hiatus and a brand new rebranding. So we figured we'd go back to the very beginning here at WLIE, what is the actual WBWD, WLIE, 540 AM Sports Talk. We're going way back in the vault from the very first guest we had on this station at Sports Talk New York over 9 years ago. This is our interview from July 2011 with Gabe KAPLER. Goes live yet from WLIE 540 AM Sports Talk Edition. Has played portions of 13 seasons with the Detroit Tigers, Texas Rangers, Colorado Rockies, and yes, the Boston Red Sox, the reason why I'm wearing the jersey tonight, the Milwaukee Brewers, and the Tampa Bay Rays. He was a 57th round draft pick by the Detroit Tigers in 1995. In 1998, with the AA Jacksonville Suns, he won the Southern League MVP award as he batted .322 with a league-high 28 home runs, 47 doubles, 146 RBIs, most ever in the Southern League. His league record for RBIs broke the 1986 record set by Terry Steinbach of 132. He also set league records with 81 extra base hits, 319 total bases, and broke the old doubles record of 44 with 47. He also led the league in hits, 176, which is the 8th most in the minors, runs 113th, which is 6th most in the minors, and finished 6th in batting. He was honored by his Minor League Player of the Year by USA Today, Baseball Weekly, and Sporting News, and USA Today. He was named Tigers Minor League Player of the Year and Detroit's #1 prospect by Baseball America. He was a member of the 2004 World Champion Red Sox and was one of 9 players on the field for the final out when they broke the 86-year curse of the Bambino. It's our pleasure to welcome Gabe KAPLER to WLIE Sports Talk New York. Welcome, Gabe.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
You know, you take a look at it. You're a graduate of William Howard Taft High School. It's a public school located on Ventura Boulevard, a school that's produced some pretty good baseball players. Larry Durko, Rick Auerbach, Kevin Kennedy, Hollywood Squares, Peter Marshall's son, Pete Lecoq, and Robin Yount. The school also produced some notable actors and actresses as well. Jason Bateman, Lucy Kudrow, a couple ones that come to mind. What was it like to go to high school at Taft for you, and what makes that baseball program so good?
You forgot probably the most famous alum of Taft. I would say it would be Ice Cube.
No, I didn't forget. I just left him out.
Yeah, that's funny. It was a hotbed for baseball talent to be sure, and that includes the whole San Fernando Valley. San Fernando Valley, my year, produced Jeff Suppan. It also produced Randy Wolf. A guy by the name of Stacy Kleiner, who was just a tremendous baseball player at the time, and year after year, the San Fernando Valley in Southern California produces top-notch baseball players. So it's an honor to be a part of that. And the Hollywood thing, I think there's a little more made of it than Taft is actually kind of a tough city school, and it just so happens that it produced some pretty high-level, high Hollywood talent.
Now, you mentioned in the open you drafted in the June Amateur Draft in '95 at the age of 19. You start playing that year for Jamestown and New York Penn League, a league that AJ and I and people in this area are now familiar because of the Brooklyn Cyclones. But going back to being a 19-year-old kid with some college experience under your belt, describe what that first taste of pro baseball was for you. And if you could put it in context as to what it must be like for a 19-year-old Bryce Harper making the jump to the majors at the same age.
Yeah, 19-year-old, when I look back on that time, I was just a baby. In fact, I don't even feel like I became a grown-up until I was probably in my mid-20s, and I really didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying to be as big, strong, and as athletic as possible. So for Bryce to be as mature as he is as a baseball player and as a human being is fairly impressive. New York Penn League was quite a surprise for me, and I'll tell you why. When they drafted me from Southern California and they told me I was going to go play in New York, I didn't really have context of what New York meant. All I thought I was going to go play in Manhattan. I didn't know what it meant to be in Jamestown. So the shock, the culture shock of landing in Jamestown, New York, in itself was strenuous enough, not to mention the high-level baseball talent that I encountered. I kind of figured that I'd be playing against much better baseball players, but those were Division I superstars that were in that league, and I was coming from a small junior college in Southern California. So the New York Penn League was a challenge, as was the transition to a small town in New York, which I had no idea existed.
Had the snow melted by the time you got there?
There's no snow on the ground. There was certainly a whole different level of like fast food restaurant, hotel chains. It was just very, very different from Southern California.
That's also interesting because I bring up Harper because it seems more and more players are making the jump from either college or just after getting a small little taste in the minors. And it's not what AJ and I are accustomed to seeing, and you followed more what we know. We're both in our 50s. The yearly progression from low A to double A to the majors. We mentioned Jamestown, but you also had stops in Fayetteville, Lakeland, Jacksonville, Toledo, playing under managers such as Bruce Fields, Dwight Lowry, Mark Melski, Dave Anderson. And other than Dave Anderson and maybe even Dwight Lowry, those are names that most baseball fans never heard of. But they're good baseball men who teach fundamentals at the minor league levels. Do you think that some of the basic fundamentals of baseball are being eroded by the lack of minor league experience some of these players are getting?
I tend to disagree with you. I don't think that there are players that are getting less minor league baseball experience. I think we're just, as a society, illuminating the ones that make the jump. So I think still the majority of players go through each minor league level if they get to the big leagues. I mean, the majority of them get weeded out, before AAA. But certainly, I think guys like Bryce Harper and Mike Trout are few and far between, and the majority of guys actually do hit the minor leagues and stay in the minor leagues a long time. In fact, we're seeing also guys that are reaching the big leagues at 26, 27, and 28. I got to the big leagues when I was 22, but certainly guys are spending a lot of time in the minor league. It just so happened when we turn on SportsCenter, it's Bryce Harper, it's Mike Trout, and guys that are just high profile. So we think that everybody's doing the same thing, or many players are doing the same thing.
What you see more than that too is, unlike what you did, Gabe, is players stay 3 years in college. And college provides, so they get into the minor leagues at a later age or later stage now, which is why I think you're seeing the 26 and the 27-year-old rookies. College has a greater, meaning higher class of ball. Just be, you had to sign 18 years old, and if you make the majors by the time you're 21, you were done.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there are a lot of guys also who are senior signs, and I saw a lot of that coming up. There's a lot of guys that were 4-year players in college, and then mixed in were the high school guys that had spent a couple of years in rookie ball, and then let's say made the leap to the New York Penn League, or some of the other short season A ball leagues, and then ultimately to a long season A ball league. So, I think it's still a good variety. And when I was a minor league player, the variety was there as well. I mean, you had guys from on my first Jamestown team, guys from the Dominican Republic, guys from Michigan University, guys from Harvard, guys from small junior colleges, and guys from high school. So there was a lot of variety then, and then in my experience managing in A-ball, the experience was the same, 10, 15 years later.
Now, of all your managers and stops in the minors, who and where do you feel you learned the most from?
Wow, that's a really tough question. I learned a whole lot from Dave Anderson. Really what I learned from Dave Anderson at AA Jacksonville was how to be relaxed. I also had an A-ball first base coach and AA first base coach by the name of Matt Martin, who's tremendously gifted in both identifying talent and teaching the fundamentals of infield play, as well as just a skilled skilled hitting coach. Now he is a low-level manager with the Los Angeles Dodgers, and a few years back he was also a roving infield instructor for the Dodgers. But guys like that, grinders, really powerful men in baseball because they develop high-level talent on a regular basis.
Well, we fast forward to Sunday, September 20th, 1998, Tiger Stadium against the Minnesota Twins, and manager Larry Parrish has you penciled into the starting lineup, batting sixth and playing right field against Benjamin Sampson. What are some of the things you remember about that day and your first at bat in the bigs?
The first thing that I remember is walking into the old Tiger Stadium clubhouse and seeing my jersey hanging in the locker with the Old English D, and just understanding who had worn that Old English D before me, Hank Greenberg, Ty Cobb, just to name a few, and the fact that I was going to be playing in that storied ballpark. In fact, fast forward to 1999 and the last game at Tiger Stadium, that was a very powerful moment for both me and my teammates. The Tigers at that time, the Bobby Higginsons, the Tony Clarks, the Damian Easleys of the world, that got to really shut that stadium down. That first moment in the big leagues was special. I had to pinch myself, but more importantly, I wish I could go back and do it over so that I could experience every breath and not be so stressed out about just trying to get a hit, which is really what I remember the most, is just finding my way to first base.
It's funny that you say that, because the next question is, the next season you actually earned the starting center fielder's job at the age of 23. You hit your first career home run on April 30th against the Tampa Bay Rays, and wound up hitting a career-high 18 home runs in just over 400 at-bats, which amazingly was third among AL rookies behind Carlos Beltran and Brian Daubach. We see here now with Lucas Duda of the Mets getting the bulk of starts in right field. How important is it for a young player to know that the job, once he's won, is pretty much his day in and day out? You basically had Polonia and Barte and even Brian Hunter starting when you weren't, but for all intents and purposes, you were the everyday center fielder. Does that allow you mentioned that relax, does that allow you to relax a little bit and try not to do too much to impress the manager to stay in the lineup?
It does allow you to relax if you believe it as a player. Unfortunately, I didn't believe it. I thought that somebody was coming to take my job every single day, and I played like it. I think I played a little bit tense that first year. In fact, and it was actually a pretty good rookie season. Like you said, I had 18 home runs, played a pretty good center field, but I really came home thinking that I wasn't very good. And I think the reason for that was the high level of success I'd had the prior 2 years in the minor leagues, and I expected it to be more of the same. And so if you're coming off the season that I had in Double-A Jacksonville and the year prior in High A Lakeland, and you or me, I was like, okay, I'm expecting to continue the success. Unfortunately, the pitching gets a whole lot better. The defense is probably the number one factor, gets a whole lot better. In other words, the shortstop's gobbling up the ball in the hole, the second baseman's going up the middle to take away that base hit, and that can be quite frustrating. Whereas that was a hit in the minor league that no longer is. So I came home that offseason after actually having a decent rookie season and thinking I stunk. And so coming back full circle, for the players that believe that they're going to have the ball every single day and be out in the field every single day, it's a very comforting feeling. I never quite believed that. Perhaps it came from the fact that I was drafted in the 57th round and felt like I had to work for every morsel. So I think that's just the way I was wired, the way I was made up. And I think certainly players around the league are made up different than I was.
As you get to the major leagues and you go through and you break in, you're not doing quite as well as you did in Double-A at High A. What goes through your mind? What do you have to learn in terms of making adjustments? Is it learning to hit the curveball? Is it learning that pitchers are going to change it the second time around they pitch to you? What's the biggest adjustment you have to learn and make?
I think it is an adjustment. There's mechanical adjustments that take place. There's timing adjustments that take place. There's spotlight adjustments that take place. And then there's fatigue adjustments that take place. For instance, in the minor leagues, you play 142 games. Now, the difference between 142 and 162 is significant. If you add on the postseason and spring training games that you play, let's say in a season like 2004, when you go all the way to the end, you're talking about 200 games that you're playing. So there's a fatigue, a wear and tear that goes through your body on top of the stress and the spotlight. You're playing in a city like Detroit or Boston. That spotlight is a whole lot brighter and hotter than, let's say, in a place like Tampa or even Milwaukee. So, the adjustments are all over the board. They're constant, and if you're not making them, you're getting weeded out quickly.
Well, you mentioned the fact that when you went home during that off season, you didn't think you did as well as you did. During the off season, after that breakout year, you're traded. What was your initial reaction? Because from what you said, and then getting that jolt, because you did, for all intents and purposes, have a very good rookie season. Now, what was your initial reaction to that trade?
I was surprised. So, I think what an organization does to a young, good player that they consider to be a prospect or a priority or a high-level player, they tend to pump into you that, you're going to wear that Tiger D forever. And it's just simply not the case. At the end of the day, it's a business. So before I figured out it was a business, I figured I'd play in a Tiger uniform my entire career and then probably retire a Tiger. Pretty naive, but like I said, as a 19-year-old kid, I was really a kid. And, even as a 22-year-old, I was really a kid. So to get traded in that off season, it was pretty exciting because it meant that another club wanted you. At the same time, you're like, oh, I guess I'm not going to be a Tiger forever. I guess I'm not going to wear the same uniform. I'm not going to be Cal Ripken Jr. or Tony Gwynn. I'm probably going to be more like, 95% of the league that plays on more than one team. And then once you come to that realization, you say, okay, it's a business. I'll treat it like a business. I'll be the best teammate that I can be. And every day I'll go out onto the field and try to kick some butt. And so you learn to focus on those types of things and keep everything else on the periphery.
And you take a look at your career, and there's a pattern that emerges that no matter where you go, you have success, and then you're moved along, but then you go to your new place, you have success again. Is it, we always hear sometimes change of scenery, but it wasn't like you were tremendously something. You were having good stints in all these different places. Did you use the trade as motivation? For instance, opening day in Texas, you hit 2 home runs on opening day. Did you use that as an incentive? Did that drive you, or was it just, something that we're reading too much into?
I don't know. I think you have to be a good self-evaluator. So while I had a couple of good years, I was just kind of, I wasn't good enough to ensure that nobody was going to come and take my job. I was, I played to the best of my ability. I think I got a lot out of my ability, but I think I was just a pretty good baseball player, and not the kind of baseball player that warrants, wearing the same uniform. There's not many guys that do, quite frankly. I mean, there's really the top, maybe 5 or 10% who end up staying in the same place for a very long time, or getting to choose where they play as free agents. So, I'm a pretty good self-evaluator. I know I was a good, not a great baseball player. And if I had been a great baseball player, I probably would have had more control about where I played. But, I struggled in Texas when I got traded to Colorado. When I signed a free agent contract with the Red Sox, there was only 2 clubs that wanted me. It was the Red Sox and the Cardinals, and I had to make a decision between the 2. When I went to go play in Japan, it was because I wanted to play every day, and I didn't have a job to play every day in the major leagues. I had a job, to be a good, solid, complementary piece of the 4th outfielder with the Red Sox. But I wanted the opportunity to play every day. So I figured, okay, let me go where I can play every day, and then I'll come back and earn an everyday job in the big leagues. You just go where you go. You go where you can get work, and you do the best job that you can possibly do when you get it.
We know that your time is limited, so we're going to just ask you a few more questions. We'll let you go. You mentioned, when your contract was purchased by the Red Sox from the Rockies. For me, that's maybe where your career becomes defined, as you're part of the 2004 Red Sox. That season, you played a career-high 136 games, hitting 6 home runs, driving in 33 runs and 290 at-bats. 272 batting average, but 303 in games that were late and close. You also led the team with 6 outfield assists, and you're one of 9 players on the field for the last out of the 2004 World Series, when the curse of the Bambino was broken. What was that like for you to be on such a special team in the history of the game?
It's still saying. I mean, I don't think a day goes by that I don't think about that I don't realize how lucky I am to be a part of that. The teammates from that team are ones that I cherish and think about, every day, the times that we had on and off the field, the bonds that can never be broken, and just the fact that I really feel like I was in the right place at the right time with the right group, because, what I realize is that to win a World Series championship, everything has to go right. I remember Curt Schilling telling me, Cap, it's not just having 25 players that contribute. It's having 35 players that contribute. You need every guy that comes up and down from the minor leagues to contribute. You need every coach to contribute, and everything has to fall into place to win a World Series ring. And so just being a part of that, just learning from guys like Curt Schilling, and playing with guys like Nomar Garciaparra and teammates like, Kevin Millar, Jason Varitek, Trot Nixon, guys that I'll call my friends till the day I die, pretty special and something that I feel pretty proud of.
Yeah, and you take that history behind you and you move on a couple other places, but then you end up on the Tampa Bay Rays. And Andrew Friedman, the Rays executive of baseball operations, said this about you when they got you. Because he's also a plus defensive outfielder, he's become a tremendous asset here. His value even extends beyond the field. His knowledge and presence make him a positive influence on our younger players. You look at what the Rays accomplished while you were there and how that young core continues to play well. Put that into context with what Andrew Friedman said about you, and how does that make you feel personally?
Well, first of all, it's flattering because Andrew is one of the sharpest GMs in the game, if not the sharpest GM in the game. He's one of those guys that has to find ways, to think outside the box and put a team on the field with a much lower payroll in a division that's an absolute monster. So, year after year, the Red Sox and the Yankees are going to dominate from a payroll perspective. So for a team like the Rays, who really doesn't even have the money to spend that, let's say, a Baltimore or a Toronto have, it's pretty impressive what Andrew and his staff have accomplished. Now, it's not just Andrew, it's the scouts. It's also, all of the front office. It's an incredible manager in Joe Madden, an incredible coaching staff that includes Davey Martinez and just good players across the board. Andrew seems to find a guy every single year to shine in the bullpen that nobody expected to shine. See Fernando Rodney this year, Rafael Soriano a few years back. So to be thought of in high regard from a guy like Andrew is super flattering, and I'm lucky enough to call Andrew a friend at this point.
Now, one interesting aspect of your career, and for AJ and I, might be a little more interesting than other people out there, it's your strong ties to your Jewish heritage. AJ and I had the pleasure of seeing you at the opening of the Maccabi games in the Fleet Center years ago.
2004, I guess.
I think it was, yeah. You have a Star of David tattooed on your left calf with the inscription, strong-willed, strong-minded in Hebrew, and the post-Holocaust motto, never again, with a flame, and the dates of the Holocaust on your right calf. You also signed a one-year contract with the Tampa Bay Rays for $1,018, the extra $18 representing both your lucky number and Chai, which is a symbol for life in Judaism. Why is your heritage so important to you?
It's just an important reminder of where I come from, who I am, and some of the things that I'm proud of. Judaism to most people is a religion. Judaism to me is much more about who I am, where I come from, and the human being that I'm proud to be. So, culturally, the history of the Jewish people is important to me, and identifying with being ultimately proud of who I am and where I come from is front and center, and why I got the tattoos, and why I've always kind of spoke out about being proud of being who I am and where I come from.
So that being said, obviously, Israel is trying to qualify to be in the World Baseball Classic. Are you looking to play on that team?
I am. It's very likely that I'll play on that team and coach as well. Brad Osmus will manage the ball club. Sean Green will participate as a player and likely as a coach. And we have some really high-level minor league players that are going to get to play in the World Baseball Classic qualifying round in September. And then ultimately, I expect us to qualify and go on and compete in the WBC. But first and foremost, we have to go to the qualifier, kick some butt, and find our way to the WBC.
And no truth to you rumor that Sandy Koufax will be the starting pitcher.
No truth to that rumor as far as I know, but I wouldn't bet against that guy.
Now, lastly, the feature that we're going to right after this is a sports simulation, basically, and we match up historical teams. Right now, tonight, we have the 91 Yankees versus the 98 Yankees. If you were to pick two teams in the history of baseball that you'd want to see match up against each other, who would they be?
Oh, man, that's tough. Maybe the 98 Yanks versus the 04 Sox.
Nice.
That's probably where I'd go with it. But it's not always a team that wins the World Series that's the best team on the field. So if I went back and had some time to analyze, I'd probably pick a team that may not have won the pretty deep.
Right. Excellent, Gabe. We appreciate your time tonight, and it's a thrill for you to be our first guest here on WLIE Sports Talk New York. So thanks so much, Gabe.
Appreciate it, Gabe.
Thanks, fellas. Take care.
You have a good night. Gabe KAPLER, member of the 2004 championship Boston Red Sox.
Since 1952, Solomon's Jewelers has been the name to trust on Long Island for jewelry. Solomon's Jewelers is a 60-year-old family-owned business run by jewelry professionals and Gemological Institute of America graduates. 3 generations of experience that can offer you certified appraisals. They have a highly skilled design, repair, and watchmaker staff on premises for all your restyling needs. Solomon Jewelers offers a wide variety of magnificent designer couture jewelry, name brand watches, and certified diamonds. Solomon Jewelers pride themselves on having the best customer service and support in the jewelry industry. They're there with 60 years of experience behind them to help educate and guide you through every step of your jewelry purchase. Solomon Jewelers has 2 convenient locations to serve Long Island's jewelry needs. 74 Minettoville Plaza, Plainview, New York, or 1030 Willis Avenue, Albertson, New York. Visit them on the web at www.solomonjewelers.com. Solomon Jewelers, serving Long Island since 1952.
Since 1964, Prince Associates' commitment has been to provide customers with the best insurance value and service available while maintaining the highest ethical standards and credibility with their clients, carriers, and the public. Prince Associates Incorporated is an independent insurance agency with a broad range of commercial, personal, life, and health products. Prince Associates has aligned themselves with some of the finest carriers to deliver these products to you. So whether you're a business or an individual, Prince Associates can help. Please visit them on the web at princein's.com for an online quote or call them at 516-822-6550. Tell them Mark and AJ sent you. Prince Associates, meeting your every insurance need since 1964.
Welcome back to 540 AM Sports Talk New York. Mark Roseman, Ryan Sherman, Mike Peace with you this Sunday evening, the last show before our big hiatus and the return of a totally new rebranded Sports Talk New York. Keep in touch with us on social media to find out more about that rebranding. It's time now for the NHL Report with Russ Cohen, sponsored by our friends over at Soho Table Hockey. What's table hockey, you say? Some of us might have grown up with rod hockey or bubble hockey or even air hockey tables. Soho Table Hockey has embraced the nostalgia of those old tabletop games and designed a whole new board for the future. Handcrafted with designer wood, state-of-the-art playing surface, unbendable rods, energy-absorbing walls, this is a table hockey game that players age 8 to 80 can enjoy. Even better, the exceptional quality and design allows the game to stand up to the intensity of tournaments, which is why Soho Table Hockey is the #1 choice of championship players throughout North America. Visit SohoTableHockey.com to learn more and start your order on a custom game. You can choose your wood, a centerized logo, and even the team matchups. Go ahead, drop the puck. You'll love Soho Table Hockey so much you won't be able to stop playing. We mentioned bubble hockey. So, you know what? The team that actually has been the best team in the bubble is the New York Islanders. I think they're 10-3 with a plus 21 differential. What is it about this team that has been able to respond so well, in this playoff atmosphere? And what has Trotz done differently with this team than he's done in the past with other teams in the early stages when he was coaches, whether it be with the Preds or the Capitals? He didn't have such instant success with those teams in the playoffs. A lot of them ended in disappointment. Right now, I'd have to say his Islander team is overachieving.
Yeah, I think he got a team that was hungry for some direction and maybe was tired of what was going on and needed stability. And now that they had it, they had a lot of high draft picks. They had players that could play. They've made a few good trades. You could say, look, we'll say forever they don't have enough scoring, but they have enough scoring right now.
Right.
So I really do think that Trotz just sort of set the tone, and being open and honest with these guys has really helped. The fact that they're, thriving in the bubble, there is no answer for it, because there are some teams that aren't doing well in the bubble, and there are others that are. There are some players that aren't doing well in the bubble, and there are others that are. It's like a psychological thing. There's no real way. I don't have a great answer for it.
The other thing that, kind of separated Trotz from the others, and not all the others, but at least the team he's playing, these last 3 days of press conferences after they postponed that day, Trotz got it where AV might not have. And, I have to cut AV some slack because his answer was somewhat correct. Listen, you know what? He's there in the bubble. He's a hockey nerd. All he basically was doing was looking at film, trying to get his team better, and he really was oblivious to what was going on in the outside world. And in some respects, that's not a bad thing. But when games get postponed, maybe you take a few minutes to watch the news and find out why.
Yeah, I think I was fine with it until the timeline where he said, they had gotten done with the team lunch at around 12:30, and then he finally saw some players from other teams, and they were talking. And then he got a text from someone that said they weren't playing, and I'm like, really? Just like 5 hours before you have to show up at the rink? That's when it hit. To me, that timeline didn't add up. I think he wanted to block some of it out too.
Agreed. All right. Dallas has been maybe the other surprise team in the bubble. What have you seen from them?
Boy, I've seen, and I'll tell you, I really liked them when I was out there for the Winter Classic, and then they sort of lost their way a little bit. If you had told me this would be Kudobin's team and not Ben Bishop, and I would have been shocked. And so that's happening. I still had belief, and still have some belief in Colorado, but losing Eric Johnson was big. It's like losing, your second best defenseman on any team, a big minutes guy, but also Grubauer is slightly better than Francis, and I think that's starting to show up too. But at the end of the day, what Dallas is doing is they're playing relentless forechecking hockey. They have big, heavy guys. Rick Bowness is a defensive specialist as a coach. They really like him. He's got things rolling the right way, and then the offense started to return when they got confidence. So it's not like they were lacking players ever. It was just like you look at them and say, what are they? I mean, we all thought they should be way better than they are, and I think we're finally seeing it.
All right, Russ Cohen here each and every week over the last 9 years. He will be a big part of our rebranding as well. We're going to turn our attention over from the ice to the hardwood because it's time for the Disaster Cleanup Services NBA report with Chaim Tauber. If your property has been affected by water or fire damage, look no further than the professionals at Disaster Cleanup Services. Independently owned and operated, Disaster Cleanup Services is a tri-state leader in property damage cleanup, specializing in water and fire damage restoration, mold remediation, sewage cleanup and decontamination, lead and asbestos abatement, and much more. For more information, visit their website, www.4disasters.com. Call today, mention the Sports Talk New York show for a free in-home inspection at 1-800-297-WATER. That's 1-800-297-9283. Disaster happened. Let us clean it up. All right, like I said, I've been really super involved with the NHL playoffs. I have been watching some NBA, and I have to tell you, the Celtics really impressed me. But before we get to the Celtics, I think the NBA really has taken such tremendous steps in, bringing, the social injustices to mainstream media. And, what they did, and when they got back, they got things for, sitting out the game. They got specific things from ownership, using the arenas for polling places, so many different things. What did you make out of what the NBA players did and what they gained out of it?
Well, I mean, the NBA is kind of the one who's, the Milwaukee Bucks really at the forefront in terms of deserving credit for the response to what happened in Washington. They were the first ones, and the response was just, I've never seen a player response, a league response really like that. We've had political protests before. We've had sports at the forefront of political change. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has been outspoken. Bill Russell was always outspoken. These are both basketball players. Obviously, you have, you have the Black Panthers who were at the Olympics. You have politics taking center stage, but an entire league voting on whether or not we're going to bother with the playoffs. It's unprecedented. Whether or not we're going to play, literally putting their entire season up and saying it's not worth it in the grander scheme of things. Macrocosm and microcosm, should we be doing this? And no other league could have ever done that if the NBA didn't do it first. No league the players aren't as empowered anywhere. What I don't want to get lost in this is that the WNBA, maybe even more so than the NBA, have been at the forefront of social change for years. And their response has been, again, they've been the leaders. They've been at the forefront as well. It's impressive. It's not surprising given the trajectory that, I guess, the power dynamic has been trending in the last couple of years. And it's not something that's going to be going away anytime soon. So what the next step, what the future holds as far as politics and the NBA in particular, it's going to be interesting to see, but it's not at all beyond the pale to think that some of these people might run for political office themselves somewhere down the line.
So how important do you think, now that the dust has settled, I guess, with the uncertainty of the season coming back, and how much credit do you give to the leadership of guys like Kawhi Leonard, LeBron James, CP3, for potentially risking the season like you had said before, but also having the wherewithal and the leadership to reach out to someone like President Obama and figure out that it might actually be the best way to keep the games going and to not risk the force majeure of the CBA being ripped up?
It's a good question. Leadership, veteran leadership, political clout, all of that is, it was crucially important heading into this. Whenever you see Paul George struggling mightily in his playoff series, and his excuse was, my head's not in it. We're in a bubble, everything's on lockdown, the world's falling apart. It's distracting, it's difficult, it's tough. So veteran leadership is always key and tantamount in a playoff series, in a playoff run, never more so than in a bubble. And with all of the other distractions, distractions may be a poor choice of words, but with everything else going on the periphery of basketball, well, basketball on the periphery of everything else, I guess, that's never more important. So to feel like they are being, their fears, their need or their desire to respond to this is being actualized and heard and realized, kind of makes it okay to play basketball, makes it okay to continue the pursuit of this championship. And I think it's critically important. And I think this playoff series may very well come down to who has that leadership. The Celtics have been impressive. I don't know if they have that guy. I think that a LeBron James type is critical in this type of playoffs.
And we appreciate your insight, and Chaim has been with us since the beginning, 9 years ago when we started here again. This is our last show before we take our fall hiatus, and we'll be rebranded, and some really exciting news coming up. So keep attuned to that on social media. It's time now for the Just Escape NFL Report with Joe Retcher. Just Escape is back, looking for something fun to do with your friends and family after being stuck in the house for months. Test your problem-solving skills at Just Escape in Massapequa. Have an experience like no other with 5 fun and challenging rooms, all varying in difficulty and scale factor. Just Escape is the perfect unique day out for all ages. Great for corporate and fundraising events and birthday parties, too. Don't forget to use the promo code FINALLY for 20% off your next booking. Visit justscapeli.com to see all of the new safety protocols they put in place and to book your room today. That's justscapeli.com. All right, Jay, so a couple of things here. It's interesting where, we just heard from Chaim, and where the NBA players made some really great strides as far as some, the protests and making some real changes. The NFL really was the first sport to really get on board, and that was with Colin Kaepernick. Let's reflect on where we were when Colin Kaepernick started doing what he did and players taking a knee to where we are now, and what the NFL's reaction to the latest shooting was. Tell us what the NFL as a whole, their players have been doing.
Well, it's kind of funny going back to 4 years with Colin Kaepernick taking that knee, and the NFL really just looking at him and not really supporting him, and just so crazy to think in the last 6 months to a year how everything's changed with Roger Goodell and saying that they should have listened to Colin Kaepernick. And now you're seeing all the different things. You're seeing these different teams, whether it was taking off practice a couple of days ago, whether it's them having one player stand out front of the other, members of his team are making a statement. Down here where I'm at in Tampa Bay, they decided not to cancel any practice, but they had a couple hours of talk, and Bruce Arians, obviously, his comments going back and forth with PA head DeMar Smith about, taking protests, and the BA saying you need to do more than that. It's been crazy, but it's been one of those things where there's been across the board, pretty much every team has done something in their own way to try to push this conversation forward. And what you do see with the NBA, you're seeing a lot of these places now, the opportunity for their stadiums to be opened for polling places here in the next couple of months.
Absolutely. All right, the other thing that we've been talking about with the NFL, and we've been talking about this for weeks with you, is what it's going to look like in stadium. And it doesn't appear that there's a global initiative, a global directive from the head on down. It looks like it's going to be team by team. What's this going to look like as far as fans in the seats?
Well, it's funny because obviously this is one of those things where regardless of what the NFL says or whatever each team says, it's really going to be down to your local legislature. So I know what the Governor Murphy is saying in New Jersey as far as with the Jets and Giants go. Down here in Florida, I know Miami's talking about 20% of fans. And I think that's kind of the ballpark figure that I'm getting for most teams. And when it starts, I think is going to differ based on that local legislature. But if you see Miami get 20% of their fans, and they'll get, 12,000, 13,000, you might get maybe 5,000, 6,000 more with you're thinking 80,000. Yeah, so you're looking at 16,000, I think, around fans for MetLife if things get closer to that and we get closer to a position where you're going to have fans there. So you're right, it's going to be a case-by-case basis based on the local legislature, but I think about 20% capacity is probably going to be the number that most teams are going to settle on.
And logistically, how are they going to have the ability to get that done? Because let's say, all right, so you're 20% of your capacity. What is the distance between seats? Can you sit with 4 of your friends, and then another 4 friends are 2 sections over? How does that work?
Yeah, and just seeing at how some of the media has been covering some of these scrimmages that have been in the facilities just this week, I thought it was just kind of like a little kind of peek behind the curtain on what they're going to do for that. But yeah, that's one of those things, Mark, that I think we're going to figure out over time. What are they going to do? You can't COVID test anybody walking. I think everybody's temperature is going to be took as they get into the building. I think you're going to get one of those things where face masks are going to be mandatory. What are they going to do with concessions?
Right, you're going to let vendors into the stadium because right, parking attendants. Yeah, it's going to be nuts.
Mm-hmm. So how likely?
Yeah, it's going to be.
Sorry there. How likely do you think it is that the NFL is going to be willing to cancel games because of Corona or postpone them like we've seen with baseball? So I know like we've had these cancellations with baseball where they're just kind of pushing back and hoping to still get them in. Do you think if big stars in the NFL start getting sick, are they going to start postponing or push through?
I think it's going to be one of those things where, if it's not any closer to where they're at right now as far as either getting, a vaccine or having a better idea with testing and getting quicker results, I think that is going to happen. I think there are going to be situations in the fall where you're going to think about it, guys. Like if one guy gets it on his team, he's going to be in these position rooms with, let's say, one member of your offensive line is going to get it. You're telling me the rest of the offensive line's not going to get it? I mean, it's just crazy to think. And you can't go out there with a second or third string. Imagine Tom Brady or Drew Brees or any of these high-profile quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes playing behind a second or third string offensive line and he gets hurt. Wow, what bad publicity for the NFL. So, yeah, I do think that's a distinct possibility where, somebody gets it on a team and you're going to see that team kind of bow out like we saw even last weekend with what happened with the Mets. And now they're playing home games at Yankee Stadium. Mark, I bet you never thought you'd see that in your life.
Yeah, and of course the Mets actually win that one for sure.
Yeah, right.
On a walk-off, crazy. All right, Jay, we appreciate Jay Retcher, heard here each and every week on 540 AM Sports Talk New York. We're going to take a break, and on the other side, we're going to, it's always been one of my goals to interview Vince Scully because he was and still is one of my broadcasting idols. I've tried for the 15-plus years doing this show. We weren't able to get him, but we were able to get a great author, CURT Smith, who did a wonderful book on him. And I just wanted to play that interview because it's one of the special ones over the course. There's so many special ones over the course of doing the show, but this one was a really interesting interview about Vince Scully. So keep it tuned right here. On the other side of the break, we'll have that coming up. So keep it tuned right here to 540 AM Sports Talk New York.
The views, opinions, and statements expressed in the preceding program reflect the views of program contributors and do not necessarily reflect the views of WBWD Radio, its management, or its sponsors. For questions and comments, please send us an email at contact@bali540am.com or visit us at bali540am.com.
Hello, this is Bob Garrett, CEO of Hackensack Meridian Health. Through its devastating spread, COVID-19 has touched all of us, leaving an impact on every facet of our lives. I'm so proud of the way Hackensack Meridian Health has mobilized to fight this outbreak. Our team members on the front lines fight tenaciously every day for the health of our patients and community. For us, this fight is personal. We are not only treating your families, but our own families as well. And while many things about COVID-19 remain uncertain, I am certain that together we will win this battle. If you can, please help our patients, our healthcare heroes, and our researchers by making a donation to our COVID-19 response fund. You can learn more at hackensackmeridianhealth.org/COVID-19. Sponsored by the Hackensack University Medical Center Foundation and aired by the New Jersey Broadcasters Association and this station.
Is a friend or loved one's gambling problem affecting your life emotionally, spiritually, or financially? Do you yourself take a toll on the people around you due to a gambling issue? Have the conversation. Visit 800gambler.org for access to a new video on the family, various programs, services, and resources for disordered gamblers, their friends, and or loved ones. At 800gambler, we offer support, treatment, and hope. We're just a phone call or click away. This message sponsored by the Council on Compulsive Gambling in New Jersey, the New Jersey Broadcasters Association, and this station.
Cap off the weekend of watching sports by talking about it with Mark Rosenman and AJ Carter on Sports Talk New York. All the intelligent conversation, insightful interviews, and reporters covering every story is right here on 5:40 a.m. from 7 to 8:30 Sunday nights. Check out SportsTalkNYLive.com for previews of upcoming guests and visit their Facebook page for a chance to win prizes. Sports Talk New York, Sunday nights from 7 to 8:30 on 5:40 a.m.
Morris County needs everyone, and especially our Spanish-speaking community, to fill out the 2020 census. It's safe, it's easy, and it's really important. If we are not fully counted, communities in Morris County from all nationalities, races, and ethnic groups will lose federal aid. Less money for housing and child care programs. Less for schools and student lunches. Less for senior citizens. Less for community health care. Competition for federal dollars is fierce. So, if you live in Morris County, please fill out your census, online or on paper. No one will ask about citizenship, social security, bank accounts, or personal info. Help Morris County count in 2020. Do it now. Visit NJ Census 2020. This message sponsored by the County of Morris, the New Jersey Department of State Complete Count Commission, and aired in cooperation with the New Jersey Broadcasters Association and this station.
In the wake of the coronavirus, many schools and colleges are utilizing distance learning. While distance learning may be the best way to keep students and school staff safe, students and educators alike will surely miss the personal interactions and social opportunities that take place in regular school settings. Here are some ways to make the most of distance learning. First of all, stay on a schedule. It's easy to put things off when you work from home. Get up, get dressed, and keep regular lunch breaks. Make time for online social interactions. Students can create study groups that can meet online to review lessons and ask questions. Get up and move. Take a break every hour to take a walk around the house. Drink some water and wash your hands. Stay alert and practice healthy habits. Eat dinner as a family. Talk about what you learned each day. Keep a regular sleep schedule. It's easy to get off track and stay up late watching television or playing video games when you don't have to leave the house. Remember, it's still a school day. This message is sponsored by the New Jersey Education Association, the New Jersey Broadcasters Association, and this station.
You're listening to WBWD 540 AM, Islip, New York, a part of Universal Stations, LLC.
The views, opinions, and statements expressed in the following program reflect the views of program contributors and do not necessarily reflect the views of WBWD Radio, its management, or its sponsors. For questions and comments, please send us an email at contact@bali540am.com or visit us at bali540am.com.
Hi, I'm Howie Rose, and you're listening to Mark and AJ on 540 Sports Talk New York.
The third baseman, number 11, Mark Rosenman.
And welcome back to 540 AM Sports Talk New York. Mark Roseman, Ryan Sherman, Mike Capice with you this Sunday evening. Our last WLIE 540 AM Sports Talk before we go on hiatus and come back with a brand new rebranded show. We want to thank everyone that's been tuning in, and we'll be back, so don't worry about it. So what we've been doing tonight is just pulling some of the stuff out of the vault. We had an interview from our very first interview ever here with Gabe KAPLER back from 2011. We featured our What If sports updates, which was pretty cool. This was an interview that I really enjoyed, and I want to pull this out because it was early, from the early days of when we first got here. Also, it's CURT Smith, who actually was a presidential speechwriter for the Bush administration. He also has done a number of books on broadcasters, and this is a book that he did on my favorite broadcaster ever, Vince Scully. So it was a very cool interview. We hope you enjoy it. This is from CURT Smith talking about his book, Pull Up a Chair.
How you doing? It's Mark and AJ from Sports Talk New York. How you doing this evening?
Fine, guys. How are you?
We're very pleased to have you because I have looked forward to a book on Vince Scully. I can't tell you how long I've actually waited for a book to be written on what I consider probably the preeminent, the greatest broadcaster of my time. People who watch the show know how high I put him up there. He's actually number one on my bucket list of people I want to interview. So it's our pleasure tonight to bring in best-selling author CURT Smith. As Vin invites his audience before each and every Dodger game, I invite our viewers to pull up a chair and gain some insight into one of our national treasures, Vince Scully. So welcome.
Guys, thank you. Great to be with you both.
So the numbers that you state in your book are breathtaking. At one time or another, Vince Scully has aired NBC's television Game of the Week, 12 All-Star games, 25 World Series, 18 no-hitters, CBS football, golf, and tennis. He's made every major radio and TV Hall of Fame, got an Emmy Lifetime Achievement Award, star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, been named the most memorable in Dodger history franchise, four-time National Sportscaster of the Year, and top sportscaster of all time. Interestingly enough, though, he's never really been the center of a book, nor has he authorized a biography. So why do you think he holds his personal life so close to the vest, whereas seemingly he invites you into his life every time he's on the air?
Well, basically, he is very protective. He's modest. He's private. He doesn't show his feelings easily. He's talked about that. He thinks actually it's a deficit. I'm not necessarily sure that's correct. But he's always said he would never write a book. He's always said that he would never collaborate with anyone else or support an authorized biography. So a couple of years ago, I called him, and I had interviewed him for a number of fire books, including Voices of the Game, Voices of Summer, and What Baseball Means to Me, and worked with him on a Reader's Digest to his mentor, Ed Barber. And I said, Ben, I respect your view. I'm not going to ask you to collaborate or make this an authorized biography, but I said, I need to do a book. I knew. And I said the reason is because you are so important in sportscasting that to write about the craft as I do without a biography would be woefully incomplete. It would be like writing about popular music without Sinatra or rock music without the Beatles or the presidency without Franklin Roosevelt, because Scully was quite simply the Roy Hobbs of baseball broadcasting, the best there ever was. Has been that for many decades. Has remained so at 81 years old now. And guys, this is an amazing feat. His 60th straight year of play-by-play.
It is phenomenal.
Not only that, but he also works alone.
And he does. He's the dinosaur. You know, all broadcasters, at least in baseball, 35, 40 years ago, did what Ben does now. Not as well, but they did it. That is, they would simply sit in the booth and talk to you being the public. Now today, he's the last of the soloists. Everyone else has a colleague, and they engage in the empty blather and the stupid kibitzing back and forth. Scully would rather talk to us, and he does so. There's an intimacy, there's an affinity. He takes it into his confidence. But the amazing thing is he does every pitch of every inning, of more than 125 games a year. He broadcasts every home game. There's all the road games in his division, does some interleague as well. That is an astounding workload at any age, much less 81.
It's amazing. Now, in your wonderful book, your final chapter, which is entitled "Let Us Define Our Terms," you try and quantify Scully's brilliance. Can you share with our viewers what sets him above? I mean, so far, above everyone else, that he actually been the gold standard of announcing for years and years now. But what makes him so different?
Well, Stephen Ambrose, the great biographer, once said that the art of writing means the craft of learning. I agree. Basically, what I do, it's my favorite chapter in the book, and a lot of critics have very kindly said as much so far, because I try to quantify genius, which is difficult because it's so elusive. It's like throwing darts in the fog. But I list a whole host of qualities, from poetry to realism, to grasp of his public, to privacy, to affinity, to knowledge. He's been better a reader and has been, dating back to boredom, but even before that was a teenager. Knowledge, certainly, I think the fact that he knows so much frame of reference beyond baseball that he can insert into a game almost as if he's pushing a button. But I think in the end, language, he plays the English language like Yasha Hypers to the violin, and he plays it in such a way that to seamlessly tie, if you would, anecdote and balls and strikes. In a 3-hour game, the bottom lead plays for 8 minutes. So you better be an artist. You better be able, in essence, to fill that air. And Ben does by using, he navigates dead air by using language as an oar. For example, let me give you just a couple quickies. He'll talk one night about twilight, little footsteps of sunshine, or how an outfielder catches the ball gingerly, like a baby chick falling from a tree. I mean, that's poetry. Or they'll say it was so hot today the moon got sunburned. Or the lead dribbler turns into a digital Clinton Gino Neal, a humble thing but thine own. And these are not exceptions. These are the rules. Night after night after night. Ad-lib brilliance. He's not like
like a talk host who gets a 7-second delay, or not like a hapless writer. We can do a lively first half, throw it away, and then begin anew. Everything with Scully is now, in the moment. And he shows what Hemingway called grace under pressure, boom, impromptu genius, game after game, astounding, not simply to me as a writer, but simply as someone who loves the English language.
You mentioned his use of, Eugene, and different, references that maybe the common man might not get. Now, we've been lucky enough to have Ernie Harwell on the show, and Ernie has some of the similar stylings, and albeit a bit more folksy than Vin, yet Vin pulls you in as if you were hanging out with him either in your living room, at a bar, and he just makes you feel comfortable.
Well, Arnie, I talked to Arnie Small World about 15 minutes ago, in fact, and he's 91, going on 19. He's from Old Georgia, Ben is from New York. The thing is, Arnie does too. Ben can, in one sentence, go from William Faulkner to the Fielder's Choice, or he can go from Jimmy Durante to John Donne. And he doesn't do it in a way that brandishes his intelligence. He's not saying, look how smart I am, because it is not condescending, but it is rather matter of fact. It's a conspiracy with the audience. He's taking you in. I love the title, Pull Up a Chair. I had to use it because he uses it every game as an invitation, and it's perfect. I mean, there's a reliability and a likability that blends as if you're sitting around the fire, except you wouldn't in August necessarily, but it's the thought that counts. And he gets the blue-collar truck driver, and he gets the college professor, and he gets everything in between.
Mark's going to ask you about a lot of things in the book that he struck him. I'm going to ask you a question. In doing this book and putting the book together, what's the one thing that most struck you? What was your biggest surprise?
My surprise was the consistent genius. That's one, as I go through it. And so much of the book for me was the archives that I had compiled of interviewing then, and also, of course, talking to compatriots now. Those are some of the examples that I just gave you. But I think the humor as well. You don't necessarily think of them as a yucky kind of guy. And yet he is. He was talking, for example, about Randy Stanley, who was passing out cigars, the former pilot ball player, infielder, passing out cigars. His wife was about to have a baby. Stanley was predicting a boy. It turned out to be a girl, and Vin said he only missed by one. Well, Andre Dawson makes the disabled list, and Vin said he's very good. Then paused, and he said, but then aren't we all? Or last year at 80, I just love this, a heavily doing advantage of Argentine, and a heavily sideburn player with, the mutton chops on each side of the face, entered the game. And out of the blue, you hear Vin forge ad-lib poetry. He said, what ho, what kind of men are these who wear their sideburns like parentheses? Now please, take your time, name one broadcaster, let alone sportscaster, who speaks like that.
Well, the funny thing is, I've been such a long-time admirer of Vin Scully. It goes way back. And I'll never forget this, and I have mentioned this on the air probably about 5 times already. Knowing that you were coming on the show tonight, I pulled out my 1986 box set of the New York Mets playoffs and World Series.
Right.
I pulled out Game 6 because I was a season ticket holder. I'll never forget coming home from the stadium. Yeah, and at that time it was on, I believe, Betamax, and I watched the bottom of the 10th inning.
Right.
I watched it tonight, and even more amazed because I really wanted to break it down, and just bear with me, this is a very long question, but it now, in retrospect, and after reading this book, it just, to me, epitomizes Vin Scully totally. All right, so you go to that game, okay? First of all, Joe Garagiola was a color commentator, and in the 10th inning, basically non-existent. All right, maybe said 2 or 3 things, unbelievable. During Mookie Wilson's at bat, the faithful at bat, okay, Mookie's fouling off pitch after pitch. Now today, obviously, Darling and Keith Hernandez would rave about what a quality at bat this was, right? And just say how he's fouling. All Vin said, very understated, stated the obvious. With each excessive foul ball, he said, foul ball 2 and 2, tension mounts here at Shea in the bottom of the 10th. Then he mentions to Garagiola, can you believe this ball game? All right? And he's setting up this final play that we all know is the Buckner play. Okay, the play develops, and we know the call. Right. Ray Knight scores, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe Bill Webb was the director for NBC. Right. From the time that Ray Knight touches home plate, okay, you go from Knight surrounded by the teammates to the crowd on the first base side going crazy. Then the crowd on the third base side. Then behind home. Then to Rick Aguilera. Then to Hojo hugging Knight. Then to Bill Buckner walking off the field dejected. Meanwhile, no sound is being uttered. Right? Then to the Red Sox dugout. Then to the stands. Then to a banner that says, "Let's go Mets, make the dream work." Then to Buck Harrelson saluting the fans. Then to Gary Carter pumping his fist. Then to Kevin Mitchell hugging Knight. Still not a word being uttered. Back to Buckner still walking off the field. Okay? Then to Calvin Schiraldi in the dugout in shock. Back to Knight overcome with exhaustion in the Met dugout. Back to the stands. Back to the Mets dugout. Back to Schiraldi. Then to the scoreboard that says "We win." Back to the Mets dugout. Then to old Cam Boyd. Back to the Mets dugout. Back to the Sox dugout. To the stands. To a sign that had the N and the B and the C, on NBC highlighted, that said "Now Boston chokes." Okay. Then a silent replay from behind Billy Buckner of the ball going through, still no words. Then to a replay of Ray Knight from second base scoring. Okay. Then to a scoreboard that said "Baseball like it ought to be." Back to the stands. Back to the Boston choke stands. 3 minutes 23 seconds go by. Not a word is spoken. Then all of a sudden the silence is broken and Vince Scully utters these lines: "If one picture is worth 1,000 words, you have seen about 1,000,000 words. More than that, you have seen an absolutely bizarre finish to Game 6 of the 1986 World Series. The Mets are not only alive, they are well and will play the Red Sox in Game 7 tomorrow." To me, it doesn't. I mean, if a guy did that today, on a national broadcast of a World Series game and went 3 minutes without speaking, he'd be tired the next day. But yet, that's what made that moment so perfect.
Well, yes. I mean, it was really interesting that you remember it with that intimacy 23 years later. I do too, for a slightly different reason. I was a Red Sox fan, and I covered it with Red. Bring that up. But, remember the TV show Mob? God will get you for that. Well, we hope he will, but he certainly got the Red Sox out. And a couple of things that I remember. Before that, the bottom of the 10th, and Vin is saying, Shea is swinging literally. And I think you were there that night, and Shea Stadium could rock back and forth, and the noise was astonishing. What I remember, not simply the 13 pitches, any one of which, had it gone the Sox way, would have won the first world title since 1918, but I remember the Knight is coming into school, and Bill says, "Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it." Usually he had that same song voice, and still does. Not that night. That voice rocked. It throbbed. It was a light with feel, and yet he never, ever lost control. He never does. Even with the urgency in his voice, which I think was pitch perfect for the moment, he was always in command. And then, as you suggest, he hushed for 60 seconds, came back, spoke briefly, then went again for the 3 minutes that you talked about. But it was the perfect call, and I do think that above any other call that Scully made, is how millions will remember him. The NBC duration, which was to me 1983 to 89, to me, no network has ever broadcast a major sport with as much respect and affection and love as NBC did baseball. And the cornerstone was Scully. This is the time meridian. The 84 World Series, Tigers, Padres, the Sporting News said that perhaps no event had ever been broadcast with more care than then. 86, as I said, 1988, Kirk Gibson homers, and Boone hushes for 67 seconds, and then says, in a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened. No one has the ability to sum an event like Scully. He draws the word picture, and he gets his brush out, and he goes to canvas, but then boom, the coda, the climax is always so beautiful. But Scully, we talked about silence. Then Winston Churchill said that words are bullets, you use as ammunition. Scully uses silence as part of his ammunition. He's more eloquent not speaking than most broadcasters are speaking. And he did that in 86 and 88. He did it for Henry Aaron when he was doing Dodgers television in 1974. Aaron homers, and Scully literally gets up, and this is what he did with increasing regularity with Gibson and also with Buckner. Gets up, goes to the back of the booth, pours a glass of water, and only then comes back to the mic. He lets the crowd sound hold sway. And in 74, he comes back and he says, and I think this is almost a verbatim quote, "A black man is getting a standing ovation in the Deep South for breaking the home run record of an all-time baseball idol." Again, the perfect summation. So then, with this exceeding discipline, he's a very disciplined person, never gets in the way of the event, never thinks he's bigger than the event, but has a way of using language and a marvelous Irish tenor of his, much more Perry Como than Luciano Pavarotti. He's the complete package, the total goods. We will not see his legs again.
And what also surprised me with the economics of radio as it is today, take XM radio and Sirius out of the equation, you would think that these production companies would try and go back to a one-man booth, but yet no one's even attempted that.
You know why? They're afraid they can't do it. Men can do it, but how many Scullys are there? I think the reason one of the reasons that broadcasters did it 35 to 40 years ago, by and large, they were better than baseball broadcasters were. They had a training in language, like Scully. The Jesuit training, and he studied Latin at Fordham, and of course specialized in English. But you had Barbara and Alan and Harry Carey and Jack Buck and Bob Prince have a great one, Phyllis and that. These are people who could do and relish the chance to do a solo for 9 innings. A lot of broadcasters today, I would suggest the great majority, can't do that. Moreover, in their heart, they know they can't do that. So they welcome the chance to have a sidekick or some kind of moronic aid where they go back and forth with the empty blather and the endless dissection of whether
should avoid each floor. Bid, bad, none.
That's true. That's not my view alone. My good friend John Miller, the master of the mimicry, who does a better Scully than Scully, and does it in English, Japanese, and Spanish, was once talking and said, there's not a thing Ben does that I wouldn't recommend anyone who wants to do this as a career. And I think that, as I mentioned in this book, I did a book about 4 years ago, Voices of Summer, where I ranked 101 best voices of all time of the more than 1,000 of broadcast baseball. Ranked them on a 1 to 100 point scale. I gave Dave Scully 100. I didn't want to. Nobody should be perfect in any craft, but honesty in the facts compelled me to say, I have to do this. To me, he is the perfect voice. And incidentally, I think that is how almost all of his peers feel as well. American Sportscasters Association, as I mentioned, this year voted him the top sportscaster of all time. And I think of some of the people that I've mentioned: Allen, Barber, Prince, Carey, Nelson, John Miller, on and on, Ernie Harwell. Ask them who's the best ever, they don't bat an eyelash. Scully, each and every one.
Yeah, I'm trying to think who he had on, which they used to, they joked. It was the voice of God.
Yeah.
That's what they say. Now, final question is, I don't know how much you watch hockey, and because now
I love hockey.
Okay, there's a guy that if he did baseball would be close. I shouldn't say close because no one's close. Doc Emmerich. It has very similar stylings. Also has the same. The way he describes the game is different than any other announcer. Also, his use of language, also unbelievable. Compared to today's announcers, he's far and above.
Well,
he's a throwback.
You're talking to the converted here. I love Doc Emmerich, and there's a reason he goes WP's hockey, because he, like Scully, there's a Latin phrase, permissible par, is first among equal. Scully is, and so is Doc. I mean, I grew up a Montreal Canadiens fan, and Danny Gallivan was sort of my hero on ice. But Doc Emmerich is a wonderful announcer. Hockey is a very demanding game. I talked about how not a lot is happening in baseball. Too much is happening in hockey. And I marvel at the precision and the diction and the going, for period after period, and really never making an overt mistake. I agree with you. I mean, if Scully towers in baseball, he does in the shiny sport.
Excellent. It's been, I have been looking forward to a book on Vin for such a long time. I know that I'm never going to get the opportunity to interview him. Just wait. But, well, tonight I'm getting a chance to interview Mike Richter, which I never thought would happen either.
You're working your way up.
and Marcel Dion. So it's a triple crown for me tonight to be able to speak to you and the two of them. So we appreciate your time tonight. A wonderful book, a great insight into the best announcer of all time, Vin Scully. So thank you so much.
You're very kind, anytime.
All right, thank you very much.
You bet.
All right, Kurt Smith, the author of a wonderful, wonderful book, Pull Up a Chair, The Vin Scully Story.
The Phoenix Tube Company Incorporated is among the country's leading manufacturers of structural ornamental stainless steel tubing, rectangles, squares, and processed flat bars. The company takes pride in its everyday commitment to quality and customer service. The philosophy of the company has been and continues to be to support the growth of the stainless tube market through distribution and service centers throughout the country. Ornamental and structural stainless steel tubing is used for a wide variety of aesthetic and mechanical products where superior finish and corrosion resistance are required. Some products manufactured include tubing for mirror bracket arms, boat rails and ladders, washroom grab bars, swimming pool rail products, medical equipment, automotive step bars and trimming, as well as structural framing for food processing equipment. For a quote or for more information on how the Phoenix Tube Company can meet your ornamental and structural stainless steel tubing needs, visit them on the web at phoenixtube.com or call them toll-free at 1-800-526-2124.
And welcome back to 540 AM Sports Talk New York. Mark Roseman, Ryan Sherman, Mike Capice with you this Sunday evening. Like I said, this is it. We're going to be on hiatus till probably towards Christmas time. Keep a look on our social media. We're big rebranding, some really exciting news. Keep following us on Facebook, and we'll talk soon. So have a great one. Everyone stay safe and healthy, and thanks for tuning in all these years.